Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Adventure Mystery Book Club. I'm Bill Mallory, branch manager of the La Jolla Library, and we are live once again. Thank you for bearing with me for the previous week. I also want to apologize for Friday. Unfortunately, I went ahead and actually read the chapter 19 and recorded it, and for some reason in the transposition of files, it got corrupted or didn't work in some way, and so it was not able to post on Friday at 4 p.m. like it was supposed to. So hopefully you saw my little message there that we will do both chapters 19 and 20. We'll do today, and the funny thing is that um, I wasn't really paying attention to chapter 20. It's actually very short. Chapter 19 is pretty short, but it's still a full chapter length, and chapter 20 is extremely short, so there really wasn't a reason to have chapter 20 for a whole day anyway, so it's kind of working out for the best as far as reading goes. Just a brief overview of what our heroes have gone through throughout the course of the novel. Of course, at this stage, you know, the majority of the story is kind of over with. The action has gone on. Of course, our three main heroes, Alan Quatermain, Sir Henry Curtis, and former naval officer Captain Good, are in an attempt to find Curtis's lost brother, who was also looking for King Solomon's mines. Have, in the course of their adventures, traveled through the African desert. They have discovered the lost and fictional country of Kukwana land in the mountains. They have helped a rightful king take his throne and depose the cruel ruler that had unjustly and unfairly usurped the throne many years ago. And then they have met the evil witch woman Gagul and made her take them to the actual King Solomon's mines. Well, the treasure room, really, not the mines themselves, but a treasure room filled with diamonds and ivory and gold. And then as they were going to walk out, she closed the door on them. This massive stone door was going to close down on them and seal them in there, where they will starve to death and die. And it ends up that this very nice native woman named Fulata ends up getting stabbed by Gagul, but while all this is going on, Gagul gets caught underneath the giant stone door and is crushed in a very lurid and violent scene. But our heroes escape, and they are ready to go on with their lives. So that's where we're at. We've had a lot of stuff happening just within this really relatively short book, and now we are ready to wrap things up. There is still a couple of plot points that have not yet been resolved, and so we will hopefully, anyway, get to those. So, chapter 19 is entitled Ignacie's Farewell. 10 days from that eventful morning found us once more in our old quarters at Loo, and, strange to say, but little the worse for our terrible experience, except that my stubbly hair came out of the treasure cave about 3 shades grayer than it went in, and that Good never was quite the same after Fulata's death, which seemed to move him very greatly. I am bound to say, looking at the thing from the point of view of an oldish man of the world, I consider her removal was a fortunate occurrence, since otherwise complications would have been sure to ensue. The poor creature was no ordinary native girl, but a person of great, I had almost said stately, beauty, and of considerable refinement of mind. But no amount of beauty or refinement could have made an entanglement between Good and herself a desirable occurrence. For, as she herself put it, can the sun mate with the moon, or the white with the black? I need hardly state that we never again penetrated into Solomon's treasure chamber after we had recovered from our fatigue, a process which took us 48 hours. We descended into the great pit in the hope of finding the hole by which we had crept out of the mountain, but with no success. To begin with, rain had fallen and obliterated our spoor, and, what is more, the sides of the vast pit were full of ant-bear and other holes. It was impossible to say to which of these we owed our salvation. Also, on the day before we started back to Loo, we made a further examination of the wonders of the stalactite cave, and, drawn by a kind of restless feeling, even penetrated once more into the chamber of the dead. Passing beneath the spear of the White Death, we gazed with sensations that which it would be quite impossible for me to describe, at the mass of rocks that had shut us off from escape, thinking that while of the priceless while thinking the while of the priceless treasures beyond, of the mysterious old hag whose flattened fragments lay crushed beneath it, and of the fair girl whose tomb it was the portal. I say gazed at the rock, for example, as we would. I'm sorry. For there we go. I'll get it right. For, examine as we would, we could find no traces of the join of the sliding door, nor indeed could we hit upon the secret now utterly lost. That worked it, though we tried for an hour or more. It is certainly a marvelous bit of mechanism, characteristic in its massive yet inscrutable simplicity of the age which produced it, and I doubt if the world has such another to show. At last, we gave it up in disgust, though if the mass had suddenly risen before our eyes, I doubt if we should have had the screwed up courage to step over Gagool's mangled remains and once more enter the treasure chamber, even in the sure and certain hope of unlimited diamonds. And yet, I could have cried at the idea of leaving all that treasure, the biggest treasure probably in that world's history, in the world's history that has ever been accumulated in one spot. But there was no help for it. Only dynamite could force its way through 5 feet of solid rock. So we left it. Perhaps in some remote, unborn century, a more fortunate explorer may hit upon the open sesame and flood the world with gems. But myself, I doubt it. Somehow I seem to feel that the tens of millions of pounds worth of jewels which lie in the 3 stone coffers will never shine round the neck of an earthly beauty. They and Foulata's bones will keep cold company to the end of all things. And yet, who can tell? With a sigh of disappointment, we made our way back, and next day started for Loo. Still, it was really very ungrateful of us to be disappointed, for, as the reader will remember, by a lucky thought, I had taken the precaution to fill the wide pockets of my old shooting coat and trousers with gems before we left our prison house. Also, Foulata's basket, which held twice as many more, notwithstanding that the water bottle had occupied some of its space. A good many of these fell out in the course of our roll down the side of the pit, including several of the big ones, which I had crammed in on top in my coat pockets. But comparatively speaking, an enormous quantity still remained, including 93 large stones ranging from over 200 to 70 carats in weight. My old shooting coat and the basket still held sufficient treasure to make us all, if not millionaires, as the term is understood in America, at least exceedingly wealthy men, and yet to keep enough stones each to form the three finest sets of gems in Europe. So we had not done so badly. On arriving at Loo, we were most cordially received by Ignacy, whom we found well and busily engaged in consolidating his power and reorganizing the regiments which had suffered most in the great struggle with Twala. He listened with intense interest to our wonderful story, but when we told him of old Gagul's frightful end, he grew thoughtful. "Come hither," he called to a very old Induna, or counselor, who was sitting with the others in a circle round the king, but out of earshot. The ancient man rose, approached, saluted, and seated himself. "Thou art aged," said Ignacy. "I, my lord the king, thy father's father, and I were born on the same day. Tell me, when thou wast little, did thou know Gagul, the witch doctress?" "Ay, my lord the king." "How was she then? Young, like thee?" "Not so, my lord the king. She was even as she is now, and as she was in the days of my great-grandfather before me, old and dried, very ugly and full of wickedness. She is no more. She is dead." "So, O king, then is an ancient curse taken from the land. Go." "Cum, I go, black puppy, who tore out the old dog's throat. Cum." "Ye see, my brothers," said Ignacy, "this was a strange woman, and I rejoice that she is dead. She would have let you die in the dark place, and mayhap afterwards she had found a way to slay me, as she found a way to slay my father, to set up Twala, whom her black heart loved in his place. Now go on with the tale. Surely there never was its like." After I had narrated all the story of our escape, as we had agreed between ourselves that I should, I took the opportunity to address Ignacy on the matter of our departure from Kukuana land. "And now, Ignacy," I said, "the time is come for us to bid thee farewell, and to start to see our own land once more. Behold, Ignacy, thou camest with us as a servant, and now we leave thee a mighty king. If thou art grateful to us, remember to do even as thou didst promise, to rule justly, to respect the law, and to put none to death without a cause. So shalt thou prosper. Tomorrow, at break of day, Ignacy, thou wilt give us an escort, who shall lead us across the mountains. Is it not so, O king?" Ignacy covered his face with his hands for a while before answering. "My heart is sore," he said at last. "Your words split my heart in twain. What have I done to you in Kubu, Makumazan, and Bagwan, that ye should leave me desolate? Ye who stood by me in rebellion and in battle, will ye leave me in the day of peace and victory? What will ye? Wives? Choose from among the maidens a place to live in. Behold, the land is yours as far as ye can see, the white men's houses. Ye shall teach my people how to build them. Cattle for beef and milk. Every married man shall bring you an ox or a cow, wild game to hunt. Does not the elephant walk through my forests, and the river horse sleep in the reeds? Would ye make war? My impis await your word. If there is anything more which I can give, that will I give you." "Nay, Ignacy, we want none of these things," I answered. "We would seek our own place." Now do I learn, said Ignacy bitterly and with flashing eyes, that ye love the bright stones more than me, your friend. Ye have the stones. Now ye would go to Natal across the moving black water and sell them and be rich, as it is the desire of white men's hearts to be. Cursed for your sake be the white stones, and cursed he who seeks them. Death shall it be to him who sets foot in the place of death and to find them. For they are yours, and yours alone. I have spoken. White men, ye can go. I laid my hand upon his arm. Ignacy, I said, tell us when thou didst wander in Zululand, and among the white people of Natal, did not thine heart turn to the land thy mother told thee of, thy native land, where thou didst see the light and play when thou wast little, the land where thy place was? It was even so, Macumazahn. In like manner, Ignacy, do our hearts turn to our land and to our own place. Then came a silence. When Ignacy broke it, it was in a different voice. I perceive that now, as ever, thy words are wise and full of reason, Macumazahn. That which flies in the air loves not to run along the ground. The white man loves not to live on the level of the black, or to house amongst his kraals. Well, ye must go, and leave my heart sore, because ye will be as dead to me, since from where ye are no tidings can come to me. But listen, and let all your brothers know my words. No other white man shall cross the mountains, even if any man live to come so far. I will see no traders with their guns and gin. My people shall fight with the spear and drink water, like their forefathers before them. I will have no praying men to put a fear of death into men's hearts, to stir them up against the law of the king, and make a path for the white folk who follow to run on. If a white man comes to my gates, I will send him back. If 100 come, I will push them back. If armies come, I will make war on them with all my strength, and they shall not prevail against me. None shall ever seek for the shining stones. No, not an army, for if they come, I will send a regiment and fill up the pit, and break down the white columns in the cave, and choke them with rocks, so that none can reach even to the door of which ye speak, whereof the way to move it is lost. But for you three, Inkubu, Macumazahn, and Bhagwan, the path is always open. For behold, ye are dearer to me than aught that breathes. So ye would go, and Infadus, my uncle, and my Induna shall take you by the hand and guide you with a regiment. There is, as I have learned, another way across the mountains that he shall show you. Farewell, my brothers, brave white men. See me no more, for I have no heart to bear it. Behold, I make a decree, and it shall be published from the mountains to the mountains. Your names, Inkubu, Macumazahn, and Bhagwan, shall be Holonipa, even as names of dead kings, and he who speaks of them shall die. There is a footnote here that says, this extraordinary and negative way of showing intense respect is by no means unknown among African people, and the result is that if, as is usual, the name in question has a significance, the meaning must be expressed by an idiom or another word. In this way, a memory is preserved for generations, or until the new word utterly supplants the old one. So shall your memory be preserved in the land forever. Go now, ere my eyes rain tears like a woman's, at times as ye look back down the path of life, or when ye are old and gather yourselves together to crouch before the fire, because for you the sun has no more heat. Ye will think of how we stood shoulder to shoulder in that great battle which thy wise words planned, Macumazahn. Of how thou wast the point of the horn that gulled Twala's flank, Bhagwan, whilst thou stoodest in the ring of the greys, Incubu, the men went down before thine axe like corn before a sickle. Aye, and of how thou didst break that wild bull Twala's strength, and bring his pride to dust. Fare ye well, perchance, forever in Kubu, Macumazahn, and Bhagwan, my lords and my friends. Ignacy rose and looked earnestly at us for a few seconds, and then he threw the corner of his kaross over his head so as to cover his face from us. We went in silence. Next day at dawn we left Loo, escorted by our old friend Infadus, who was heartbroken at our departure, and by the regiment of buffaloes. Early as was the hour, we found the main street of the town lined with multitudes of people, who gave us the royal salute as we passed at the head of the regiment, while the women blessed us for having rid the land of Twala, throwing flowers before us as we went. It was really very affecting, and not the sort of thing one is accustomed to meet with from natives. One ludicrous incident occurred, however, which I rather welcomed, as it gave us something to laugh at. Just before we reached the confines of the town, a pretty young girl, with some lovely lilies in her hand, ran forward and presented them to Good. Somehow they all seemed to like Good. I think his eyeglass and solitary whisker gave him a fictitious value, and then said that she had a boon to ask. Speak on, he answered. Let my lord show his servant his beautiful white legs, that his servant may look on them and remember them all her days, and tell them to her children. His servant has traveled 4 days to see them, for the fame of them has gone throughout the land. I'll be hanged if I do, exclaimed Good excitedly. Come, come, dear fellow, said Sir Henry, you can't refuse to oblige a lady. I won't, replied Good obstinately. It's positively indecent. However, in the end, he consented to draw up his trousers to the knee, amidst notes of rapturous admiration from all the women present, especially the gratified young lady, and in this guise he had to walk till we got clear of the town. Good's legs, I fear, will never be so greatly admired again. Of his melting teeth, and even of his transparent eye, the Kukwanas wearied more or less, but of his legs, never. As we traveled, Infadus told us that there was another pass over the mountains to the north of the one followed by Solomon's Great Road, or rather that there was a place where it is possible to climb down the wall of cliff which separates Kukwana land from the desert, and is broken by the towering shapes of Sheba's breasts. It appeared also that rather more than 2 years previously a party of Kukwana hunters had descended this path into the desert in search of ostriches, whose plumes are much prized among them for war headdresses, and that in the course of their hunt they had been led far from the mountains and were much troubled by thirst. Seeing trees on the horizon, however, they walked toward them and discovered a large and fertile oasis, some miles in extent and plentifully watered. It was by way of this oasis that Infadus suggested that we should return, and the idea seemed to us a good one, for it appeared that we should thus escape the rigors of the mountain pass. Also, some of the hunters were in attendance to guide us to the oasis, from which they stated they could perceive other fertile spots far away in the desert. There is a footnote here that reads, "It often puzzled all of us to understand how it is possible that Ignacie's mother, bearing a child with her, could have survived the dangers of her journey across the mountains and the deserts, dangers which so nearly proved fatal to ourselves. It has since occurred to me, and I give the idea to the reader for what it is worth, that she must have taken the second route and wandered out like Haggard into the wilderness. If she did so, there is no longer anything inexplicable about the story, since, as Ignacy himself related, she may well have been picked up by some ostrich hunters before she or the child were exhausted, and led by them to the oasis. Thence she may have traveled by stages to the fertile country, and so on by slow degrees southwards to Zululand." Where am I? Oh, there we go. Okay. Traveling easily on the night of the fourth day's journey, we found ourselves once more on the crest of the mountains that separate Kukuanaland from the desert, which rolled away in sandy billows at our feet, and about 25 miles to the north of Sheba's Breasts. At dawn on the following day, we were led to the edge of a very precipitous chasm, by which we were to descend the precipice and gain the plain 2,000 or more feet below. Here we bade farewell to that true friend and sturdy old warrior Infadus, who solemnly wished all good upon us, and nearly wept with grief. "Never, my lords," he said, shall mine old eyes see the like of you again. Ah, the way that Incubu cut his men down in battle! Ah, for the sight of that stroke with which he swept off my brother Twala's head! It was beautiful. Beautiful! I may never hope to see such another, except, perchance, in happy dreams." We were very sorry to part with him. Indeed, Good was so moved that he gave him a souvenir. What do you think? An eyeglass. Afterwards, we discovered that it was a spare one. Infadus was delighted, foreseeing that the possession of such an article would increase his prestige enormously, and after several vain attempts, he actually succeeded in screwing it into his own eye. Anything more incongruous than the old warrior looked with an eyeglass I never saw. Eyeglasses do not go well with leopard skin cloaks and black ostrich plumes. Then, after seeing that our guides were well laden, were well laden with water and provisions, and having received a thundering farewell salute from the buffaloes, we wrung Infadus by the hand and began our downward climb. A very arduous business it proved to be, but somehow that evening we found ourselves at the bottom without accident. "Do you know," said Sir Henry that night, as we sat by our fire and gazed up at the beetling cliffs above us, "I think that there are worse places than Kukuanaland in the world, and that I have known unhappier times than the last month or two, though I have never spent such queer ones. Eh, you fellows?" "I almost wish I were back," said Good, with a sigh. As for myself, I reflected that all's well that ends well, but that, in the course of a long life of peril, I never had such shaves as those which I had recently experienced. The thought of the battle still makes me feel cold all over, and as for our experience in the treasure chamber, next morning we started on a toilsome trudge across the desert, having with us a good supply of water carried by our 5 guides, and camped that night in the open, marching again at dawn on the morrow. By noon of the third day's journey, we could see the trees of the oasis of which the guide spoke, and within an hour of sundown we were walking once more upon grass and listening to the sound of running water. Chapter 20 is entitled Found. And now I come to perhaps the strangest adventure that happened to us in all this strange business. One, too, which shows how wonderfully things are brought about. I was walking along quietly some way in front of the other two down the banks of the stream which runs from the oasis till it is swallowed up in the hungry desert sands, when suddenly I stopped and rubbed my eyes, as I might. There, not 20 yards in front of me, placed in a charming situation under the shade of a species of fig tree and facing to the stream, was a cozy hut, built more or less on the Kafir principle, with grass and withes, but having a full-length door instead of a bee-hole. "What the dickens," said I to myself, "can a hut be doing here?" Even as I said it, the door of the hut opened, and there limped out of it a white man, clothed in skins and an enormous black beard. I thought that I must have got a touch of the sun. It was impossible. No hunter ever came to such a place as this. Certainly no hunter could ever settle in it. I stared, and so did the other man, and just at that juncture Sir Henry and Good walked up. "Look here, you fellows," I said. "Is this a white man, or am I mad?" Sir Henry looked, and Good looked, and then all of a sudden the lame white man with the black beard uttered a great cry, and began hobbling towards us. When he was close, he fell down in a sort of faint. With a spring, Sir Henry was by his side. "Great powers!" he cried. "This is my brother George!" At the sound of the disturbance, another figure, also clad in skins, emerged from the hut, a gun in his hand, and ran towards us. On seeing me, he too gave a cry. "Macumazan!" he hallooed. "Don't you know me? Baas! I'm Jim, the hunter. I lost the note you gave me to give it to the boss, but we have been here nearly 2 years, and the fellow fell at my feet and rolled over and over, weeping for joy." "You careless scoundrel," I said. "You ought to be well sjambakt, that is, hided." Meanwhile, the man with the black beard had recovered and risen, and he and Sir Henry were pump-handling away at each other, apparently without a word to say. But whatever they had quarreled about in the past, I suspect it was a lady, though I never asked, it was evidently forgotten now. "My dear old fellow," burst out Sir Henry at last, "I thought that you were dead. I have been over Solomon's Mountains to find you. I'd given up all hope of ever seeing you again. And now I come across you perched in the desert like an old Osvogel." There is a footnote here that says, "like a vulture." "I tried to cross Solomon's Mountains nearly 2 years ago," was the answer, spoken in the hesitating voice of a man who has had little recent opportunity of using his tongue. "But when I reached here, a boulder fell on my leg and crushed it, and I have been able to go neither forward nor back. Then I came up. 'How do you do, Mr. Neville?' I said. 'Do you remember me?' 'Why,' he said, isn't it Hunter Quatermain? Eh, and Good, too? Hold on a minute, you fellows. I'm getting dizzy again. It's also very strange, and when a man has ceased to hope, so very happy." That evening, over the campfire, George Curtis told us his story, which in its way was almost as eventful as our own, and put shortly amounted to this. A little less than 2 years before we had started from Sitanda's Kraal to try to reach the Suleiman Berg, uh, as for the note I had sent him by Jim, that worthy lost it, and he had never heard of it until today. But acting upon information he received from the natives, he headed not for Sheba's breasts, but for a ladder-like descent of the mountains down which we had just come. Clearly a much better route than marked out in old Dom Silvestra's plan. In the desert, he and Jim suffered great hardships, but finally they reached this oasis, where a terrible accident befell George Curtis. On the day of their arrival, he was sitting by the stream, and Jim extracting the honey from the nest of the stingless bee, which is to be found in the desert, on top of a bank immediately above him. In so doing, he loosened a great boulder of rock, which fell upon George Curtis's right leg, crushing it frightfully. From that day, he has been so lame that he found it impossible to go either forward or back, and had preferred to take the chance of dying on the oasis to the certainty of perishing in the desert. As for food, however, they got on pretty well, for they had a good supply of ammunition, and the oasis was frequented, especially at night, by large quantities of game, which came thither for water. These they shot at or trapped in pitfalls, using the flesh to eat, and after their clothes wore out, the hides for clothing. And so, George Curtis ended, we have lived for nearly 2 years like a second Robinson Crusoe and his man Friday, hoping against hope hoping against hope that some natives might come here to help us away, but none have come. Only last night we settled that Jim should leave us and try to reach Sitanda's Kraal to get assistance. He was to go tomorrow, but I had little hope of ever seeing him back again. And now you, of all people in the world, you, who, as I fancied, had long ago forgotten all about me, and were living comfortably in old England, turn up in a promiscuous way and find me where you least expected. It is the most wonderful thing that I have ever heard of, and the most merciful, too. Then Sir Henry set to work and told him the main facts of our adventures, sitting till late into the night to do so. By Jove, said George Curtis, when I showed him some of the diamonds. Well, at least you've got something for your pains, besides my worthless self. Sir Henry laughed. They belong to Quatermain and Good. It was part of the bargain that they should divide any spoils there might be. This remark set me thinking, and having spoken to Good, I told Sir Henry that it was our joint wish that he should take a third portion of the diamonds, or, if he would not, that his share would be handed to his brother, who had suffered even more than ourselves on the chance of getting them. Finally, we prevailed upon him to consent to this arrangement, but George Curtis did not know of it until some time afterwards. Here, at this point, I think that I shall end my history. Our journey across the desert to Sitanda's Kraal was most arduous, especially as we had to support George Curtis, whose right leg was very weak indeed, and continually threw out splinters of bone. But we did accomplish it somehow, and to give its details would only be to reproduce much of what has happened to us on the former occasion. 6 months from the date of our re-arrival at Sitanda's, where we found our guns and other goods quite safe, though the old rascal in charge was much disgusted at our surviving to claim them, saw us all once more safe and sound at my little place on the Berea, near Durban, where I am now writing. Thence I bid farewell to all who have accompanied me throughout the strangest trip I ever made in the course of a long and varied experience. P.S. Just as I had written the last word, a Kaffir came up to my avenue of orange trees, carrying a letter in a cleft stick, which he had which he had brought from the post. It turned out to be from Sir Henry, and as it speaks for itself, I give it in full. 1st of October, 1880, Brayley Hall, Yorkshire. My dear Quatermain, I sent you a line a few mails back to say that the three of us, George, Good, and myself, fetched up all right in England. We got off the boat at Southampton and went up to town. You should have seen what a swell Good turned out in the very next day. Beautifully shaved frock coat fitting like a glove, brand new eyeglass, etc., etc. I went for a walk in the park with him, where I met some people I know and at once told them the story of his beautiful white legs. He is furious, especially as an ill-natured person has printed it in a society paper. To come to business, Good and I took the diamonds to Streeter's to be valued as we arranged. And really, I'm afraid to tell you that they put them at, it seems so enormous. They say that, of course, it is more or less guesswork, as such stones have never, to their knowledge, been put on the market in anything like such quantities. It appears that, with the exception of one or two of the largest, they are of the finest water, and equal in every way to the best Brazilian stones. I asked them if they would buy them, but they said that it was beyond their power to do so, and recommended us to sell by degrees over a period of years. Indeed, for fear that we should flood the market. They differ, however, £180,000 for a very small portion of them. They offer, however, that's what I meant to say. You must come home, Quatermain, and see about these things, especially if you insist upon making the magnificent present of the third share, which does not belong to me, to my brother George. As for Good, he is no good. His time is too much occupied in shaving and other matters connected with vain adorning of the body. But I think he is still down on his luck about Foulata. He told me that since he had been home he hasn't seen a woman to touch her, either as regards her figure or the sweetness of her expression. I want you to come home, my dear old comrade, and to buy a house near here. You have done your day's work, and have lots of money now, and there is a place for sale quite close, which would suit you admirably. Do come. The sooner the better. You can finish writing the story of our adventures on board the ship. I have refused to tell the tale till it is written by you, for fear lest we shall not be believed. If you start on receipt of this, you will reach here by Christmas, and I book you to stay with me for that. Good is coming, and George, and so, by the way, is your boy Harry. There's a bribe for you. I have had him down for a week's shooting and like him. He is a cool young hand, and he shot me in the leg, cut out the pellets, and then remarked upon the advantages of having a medical student with every shooting party. Goodbye, old boy, I can't say any more, but I know that you will come, if it is only to oblige. Your sincere friend, Henry Curtis. P.S. The tusks of the great bull that killed poor Kiva have now been put up in the hall here, over a pair of buffalo horns you gave me, and look magnificent. And the axe which I chopped off Twala's head is fixed above my writing table. I wish that we could have managed to bring away the coats of chain armor. Don't lose poor Foulata's basket in which you carried off the diamonds. H.C. Today is Tuesday. There is a steamer going on Friday, and I really think that I must take Curtis at his word and sail by her for England. If it is only to see you, Harry, my boy, and to look after the printing of this history, which is a task I do not like to trust to anybody else. Alan Quatermain. And that's it, my friends. We have finished King Solomon's Mines. A happy ending for our adventurers. Lots of diamonds and lots of wealth, and otherwise everyone seems to have gotten what they want, except perhaps for Captain Good, who is pining for the lost Fulata. So there we go. A somewhat lurid and violent story in all, and certainly in many ways not very politically correct. But, as I always say, it is a product of its time, and it really did set the standard for many adventure stories that would come after it, Indiana Jones. And it would really kind of, many elements of the story would later be seen and re-seen in other tales going forward and in literature that would come afterwards. So it really was an important piece, and certainly I think worth reading. And I'm so glad that you could join me for King Solomon's Mines. So that brings up the question of what are we going to read next? And when I checked the Facebook page, of course, what I did is I made a list of potential titles that are within the adventure and mystery genre that are in public domain and available on Project Gutenberg, so they're available for free, and people can read them without cost. And as I made that list, that obviously the suggestions, people could add in their own stuff, but and normally what we've had to do is we've had a similar number of votes for a certain title or multiple titles, so we've had to pick and choose. However, when I checked it beforehand, I see that there is in fact a clear winner, and that is there's one vote for Frankenstein and there's one vote for Murders of the Rue Morgue, but there were two votes for Whose Body, the Lord Peter Wimsey book by Dorothy Sayers. And since that is the majority, we are going to read Whose Body by Dorothy Sayers starting Wednesday at 4 p.m. We will start that, and I personally have not read it myself, so I'm looking forward to enjoying it along with you, and I do hope you can join me for Whose Body by Dorothy Sayers, as voted on by the members of our group, and I'm so glad that you participated and can make this part of your own entertainment for Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So join me on Wednesday, 4 p.m. Dorothy Sayers, Whose Body. We'll be starting it then. It's a great mystery from what I understand, and I'm looking forward to discovering it along with all of you. We'll see you again. Hope you have a great day, rest of your day today and Tuesday, and join me back again on Wednesday at 4 p.m. as we start our brand new book. Thank you, everyone. Take care now.